So, the next review in my Disney classic animated movie series is Pinocchio, which was released in, I believe, 1940, which is about a puppet who is brought to life by a blue fairy and then being told if he behaves and is truthful and all of this stuff, he will become a real boy. But of course, he ends up going on various adventures, which sort of tests that, puts him to the test when it comes to being honest. And of course, if he is dishonest, his nose grows, which is funny because that only really plays into one scene. I can't remember from watching it whether there was any other scenes where his nose grows because he's lying. So I guess he's very honest throughout the rest of it, even though he does get into a lot of scrapes. This was another one that I probably grew up seeing bits of when I was younger, but only saw properly for the first time a couple of years ago. I rewatched it, and both times I've struggled to really get into this film or be that invested in it, which is a bit funny because it's not a romance, it's not a princess one. It's just about a little puppet and his adventures. And let's face it, it is quite an interesting story. It's very horrifying in parts. But it is also, it doesn't really slow down or get boring or anything. But I don't know, it's not one that I'm that fussed on. Also, I got to be joined by my conscience, my little Jiminy Cricket, who's going to sit in on the review with me. So like I said, for the most part, it's a nice little film. It does have some interesting moments. I think the sort of heart of the film is, of course, Pinocchio's attachment to his father, because we see a nice scene at the beginning where he's pretending, he's still a marionette. He's moving him around and they're dancing and stuff. And then the joy Geppetto gets from actually when he comes to life. And then at the end, that whole sadness of thinking, oh, my boy's gone. And then he becomes a real boy. Yeah, spoilers, but I think most people know the story of Pinocchio. But it does have a lot of, like I said, the plot of it is that Pinocchio just gets into trouble, like when he's sold off, mostly because he keeps trusting this fox, which is the world of Pinocchio is a very odd one, because you have got anthropomorphic fox and I think a mangy cat, that are just sort of walking around in what I think is Victorian, because if you look at Jiminy, he looks to be dressed like a Victorian or maybe a Georgian. I'm not sure. It is very hard to sort of date this film, because later on they end up at a fairground where there's like rides and stuff like that. So that implies that there's electricity and everything. So it's like, when is this set? But then it's set in a fantasy world where a blue fairy can bring a puppet to life and a cat and a fox can walk around and sell children into the theatre and all that. Because of course Pinocchio ends up in the theatre and then realizes he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have let himself get talked into that. And of course, he lies about how he got into it. And then he gets he doesn't really get duped. He does get kidnapped because they try to convince him to go to this place, which is paradise, I think it is, that's supposed to be like amazing and great. And they basically kidnap him and send him there, even though he's sort of on the boat thinking, yay, I've got a ticket to go there. And then he finds out that it's actually a place where this guy's turning kids, troublesome boys to be fair, into donkeys. And that's a plot that never gets resolved. I mean, I suppose you're supposed to not have much sympathy for these boys because they are naughty. You see them trash this place and they smoke and they drink and they gamble, and you're not supposed to feel sympathy for them, I guess. But then the scenes where they're being turned into donkeys is quite horrifying, and you do feel sorry for them. And of course they just get sent down these mines, and that never gets, they don't get saved from that. Pinocchio doesn't change anything. All he does is escape with Jiminy, and it's like, okay. And I think a lot of early Disney films did have some very horrifying moments. I might have to have a count of how many horrifying moments there are in some of these Disney films, and definitely the kids turning into donkeys is definitely one of them. It's definitely unsettling. And it also, I suppose, because you actually see Pinocchio smoking a cigar and drinking, I suppose it's sort of a subtle way of saying, well, maybe not so subtle, but the evils of smoking and drinking at such a young age, or at all maybe. Not a lesson you'd necessarily see them tell in the 40s, I guess, but I don't know. I don't really know what the sensibilities or the morals of the 40s were, really. But yeah, just the idea that these kids are smoking and drinking, and it's like, well, don't do that. Oh, you'll get turned into a donkey, I suppose. I'll admit them. Probably my favourite part of it is actually the climax, because even though it kind of comes out of nowhere that Geppetto somehow he goes out to look for Pinocchio and then he gets eaten by a whale. It's like, what happened in between? How did he end up on a ship looking for Pinocchio and ends up in a whale? You know, did he really think Pinocchio had taken a boat somewhere else? I don't know. I mean, he had to another island, but Geppetto doesn't know that. I really don't quite get. I want to sort of know what happens in between there. But the point is that Pinocchio just sort of drops himself at the bottom of the ocean and goes looking for Monstro. And I suppose crickets can breathe underwater, because Jiminy had no problem. Again, fairy tale, don't question it too much. And then he gets into Monstro, and then he has to escape. They have to get out of there on a raft and escape and everything. And that's actually really exciting. I actually did like the climax of them trying to escape Monstro. And Monstro himself was quite scary as well. And you do sort of really do fear for their lives. So yeah, I really like the climax of it. But really, that's the only part I guess I was all that invested in, because I don't know. It's not a story. I'm not saying it's a bad story at all. It's a perfectly good, fun story for kids, if a bit terrifying. But I have to admit, it's not really, like, it's not one that I'll necessarily watch again anytime soon. But it was okay. I would probably rank it as okay. Favorite song. This is something I'm going to do at the end of all my reviews, to say what my favorite song and my favorite character was. Song-wise, there wasn't really many songs in Pinocchio. But I'd probably say When You Wish Upon a Star, which is the opening number, which is just, it's a lovely, beautiful song, and it's what you kind of think, it's a very classic Disney song. It's one that you do associate with Disney. When you wish upon a star, your dreams will come true. That's Disney in a nutshell, isn't it? So that's really lovely. I also love the clocks. Oh, I have to say this before I finish, because it just came to my mind. I love the clocks they have. Geppetto's workshop has all these different clocks, and the creativity in those clocks and what they all do when it strikes the hour is absolutely amazing. I love those clocks. That's probably one of my favourite bits of the whole film, actually, is just these clocks. But yeah, favourite character, I don't know, because Jiminy's not a bad character. Neither is Pinocchio, but I don't think there's any characters that stand out as, yeah, I really like those characters. Those definitely my favourite characters. But I don't know, probably I like Jiminy. Jiminy's cool. I mean, like I said, he tries to keep Pinocchio on the straight and narrow, but even he sort of has his limits and tries to give up. And then of course realizes he can't. So, you know, he has his own little arc, I suppose, when it comes to looking after Pinocchio. So yeah, he's quite a cool little character. And he also pops up again in another one of the animated films. I know that. So yeah, overall I would put Pinocchio in the middle. So yeah. So yeah, that's that. And then the next film is Fantasia, which is going to have a very different sort of review, because that's not an animated film, it's a load of shorts. So yeah, I'll share my thoughts on that next time. So good night.